Greater Somerville for March 15, 2011. I'm Joe Lynch.
And I'm Tom Pasquarello.
There you go. My guest tonight is the newly appointed Chief of the Somerville Police Department. A Cambridge native and 30-year law enforcement professional. He most recently retired from the nation's drug enforcement agency with a wide range of duties for that agency in Southeast Asia. He is a graduate of Northeastern University. A little sound problem, but we're getting adjusted here. And thank you. Thank you very much. He is a graduate of Northeastern University and Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, in addition to Johns Hopkins University. He assumed his duties with the Somerville Police Department in January of 2011, and it is my pleasure to welcome for his first visit to Greater Somerville, the new Somerville Chief of Police, Tom Pasquarello. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Pleasure to be here.
I know it was a long commute for you to get from the station down here to the station.
That's correct.
2 stations.
Better than my last commute of about 27 hours in a plane to get here.
There you go, there you go. I've asked the Chief to give me a little bit of space right up front here. We've got a statement that we would like to read to the Somerville viewers. We here at Greater Somerville and SCAT TV would just like to make a short statement concerning the recent series of devastating events in Japan. As most of Somerville is now fully aware, the life-shattering quake and tsunami that hit the island nation has had deadly and long-lasting consequences. While our Somerville community and most of the rest of mankind can barely comprehend the pain and sorrow of those directly affected by these events, we can help. Our community and our nation are known for coming to the aid of those in need. To that end, we urge you to make any financial donation you can afford to the American Red Cross at redcross.org to assist the Japanese people. Please consider making your donation today, and thank you in advance. Chief, I know you and I were talking before the show that the country of Japan was part of your purview when you were within Department of the DEA.
That's correct.
So did you ever live in Japan itself?
I lived in Bangkok. I was in Thailand and ran the operations for 34 countries out of Bangkok. That was our regional office. Mm-hmm. And our office in Tokyo was one of 16 DEA offices that we had spread out throughout the region. So I spent quite a bit of time in Tokyo, probably every 4 or 5 months, working with the Japanese National Police, working with Japanese Customs, working with their ministry. In fact, just happened to have one of the gifts from Japan is one of their...
That's from their
Japanese National Police.
National Police.
And it's unfortunate. It's a tragedy. But the Japanese are very well organized. I'm sure they had a lot of the contingency plans in place so that if it was to happen in a country, Japan seems to have all of the parameters covered. So hopefully they'll be able to deal with this effectively.
Yeah. I've been, like many people, I've been glued to the television over the weekend watching the series of events, and it just keeps getting worse. With the nuclear reactors now appearing as though, my understanding is there are 6 reactors within that nuclear power plant, and we now have 4 of them in dire trouble. So, I think the best we can do is, for any folks who are from Japan that we know in this community is to support them the best we can. But, as in the past, Chief, this station has done specials when it came to the Haitian earthquake. We had relief efforts in the city of Somerville. As many people, still very fresh in a lot of our minds, this community stepped up after 9/11. We've been there for other major disasters, the tsunami a couple of years ago, and most recently the earthquake in New Zealand. And it just, it shows the resiliency and the generosity of this community when you see people step up to the plate like that. So, we hope for the best in Japan, but we'll just have to keep praying and keep our fingers crossed. So, you spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia.
I spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia, Europe, and Africa as well. So my responsibilities in the past covered the regions of Europe and Africa. I had over 100 countries that we were represented with when I was assigned to Rome and to Milan as well. And then in Southeast Asia, out of Bangkok with the 34 countries. So from China and Mongolia all the ways down to Australia, New Zealand was my area of
That's a
responsibility.
lot of travel, Tom Pasquarello.
It was, and that's why it's nice to be in Somerville, where I have about 5
There you
miles.
go. You're originally from Cambridge, though.
Originally from North
native.
Cambridge, yes, exactly.
So Somerville, you're no stranger to Somerville. I'm sure that, when the Pasquarello boys were growing up, you traveled across the border here.
All the time. In fact, just about every Saturday we'd be down on Somerville Ave. My mother would take us down there for the fruit vendor down there, and Somerville and Cambridge was interchangeable.
Yeah.
Relatives that still live in Somerville, so Somerville was my second home.
Yeah. To this day, people still say, hey, Pasquarello, wasn't he in Cambridge cop? And I have to say, no, that was the chief's brother, Frank.
That's correct.
Yeah, many, many years, the spokesman for the Cambridge Police Department.
So I actually had my start with the Cambridge Police Department over 30 years ago.
Yeah, 30-year law enforcement.
That's just.
So somebody said to me, why did he opt out of the federal law enforcement? But you just told me before the show that mandatory retirement was fast approaching.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a young person's occupation. So at age 57, it's a mandatory retirement under the federal system for federal law enforcement.
Yeah.
And at 53 years old, I had about 3 years left. The way my birthday falls, I would have had about 3 years left before it was mandatory retirement.
Yep.
And I did want to get back home to the area, and a city like Somerville suited my needs with everything that it has to offer. And again, it's a microcosm of everything I've been doing over the past 29 years with DEA. The countries I worked in Southeast Asia, the countries I worked in Europe, the countries in Africa, there are many people that reside here that once called those countries home.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking for a place where I could make a difference in a community, and Somerville was the best fit for me.
Yeah.
In fact, there probably would not have been any other job that I would have been interested in, but Somerville was the right time, the right place, and it's a city that has a lot to offer.
Tell us a little bit about your reception right down here at the Union Square Station. You came in. You are only our second chief of police to come in from outside of the civil service system. As many of the viewers remember, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, the mayor and the board decided that they wanted to restructure. After an extensive study, they were going to restructure part of the Somerville police force, and one of the recommendations was to take the chief's position out of civil service and hire from the outside. So you are the second. The former chief, Tony Holloway, was here for a couple of years and then went back to Florida. So what's the reception? Are they kind of used to the fact that the chief is no longer part of the civil service system?
Well, I'm not sure if people are used to the system. Obviously, they've been exposed to it, and there's pros and cons, because someone that comes in from the outside tends to have a little bit of a different outlook of different policies and procedures and different things that have been, exposed throughout the career, whereas sometimes people that, have worked their ways up within the department or within Massachusetts have an idea of how it works in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the things that really helps me is that I could look at some of the programs that have taken place in cities similar to Somerville, whether it's New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford, take the programs that really work well, and then I could look at other countries as well. Certain types of community involvement in places like Switzerland, places in Europe where things work very well, and then I could look at other countries and other departments where things don't work as well, and pick and choose what works well and how it might fit into the needs of the Somerville community and the needs of the Somerville Police Department.
So it's amazing, we tend to, don't respond to this, Chief, but we tend to live in our own little cocoon. Not just Somerville, but Somerville and then Massachusetts and New England. We tend to sometimes have blinders on, but what I think is interesting is that you can take some of your same experiences in far-flung countries across the globe when it comes to working with the community that you're involved with, and you can just lift that up and put it into Somerville, because people are people. And law enforcement is law enforcement. It's how you work those two parts together really knows no borders.
Sometimes the pieces work, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
But there are certain components from countries as diverse as Indonesia and Switzerland, the Netherlands, that there are certain components that can work well here in Somerville. And then there's other components that wouldn't work. So it's really just a little bit of a massage to see what programs can be easily adjusted and how they fit in, and in the end, what the performance will be as a result.
Yeah. You've got an amazing crew of people down here. right?
I do.
Working in the Somerville Police Department, men, women. One of the things that I was asked about in an email that came in this morning is make sure you ask the chief to give us an update on Detective Oliveira.
Detective Oliveira, he's doing well.
Yep.
He was on vacation. He's back, and he's looking forward to returning to work.
Great.
So for all of the listeners out there, America's Most Wanted, there's the website. We're involved with the voting. So we're hoping that Detective Oliveira will be the most valuable and America's #1. That he'll win the results, which will be coming up pretty soon.
That television program, you have to check your local listings. I know we don't air it here on Scat TV, but check the local listings and go online to America's Most Wanted website, and you can vote for Mario to be the most admired. I forget what the actual title is, but it's one of the most admired law enforcement officers. So vote for Mario. I don't know what the closing date is, but get out there and vote for him. This community was rocked by the incident with Mario, and we haven't seen that kind of outpouring for a public servant in a long time in this community. So this show, many other shows, many people across this community were pulling for Mario, so we're glad. But Mario, I got to tell you, I know that you watched the show one night, and I got to tell you, your brother Victor still says he's the better looking brother. Let's move on to some crime stats. I know people are wondering what's happening across the city, and you've got some good news to report about overall, in general, the crime in the city of Somerville.
I do. Well, overall, crime is down. But again, I want to preface it with, whenever we talk about statistics, sometimes it could be misleading.
Yep.
Because there's always peaks and valleys that go with the statistics. So sometimes there might be a rash of burglaries or motor vehicle thefts, which would give an unfair position as far as what really has taken place. And as far as the way I would characterize it is how the citizens here in Somerville feel. If they feel secure walking on the bike paths, if they feel safe when they're about their regular business, that's more important than what the statistics tell me. But the statistics are also a tool that we have to look at, and we have to be cognizant of it to see if there are some of those peaks that...
And it's an indicator.
It is an indicator.
It's an indicator. You could start see something trending up, as we've seen over the years, and it doesn't take an analyst to figure it out, that, take, for example, assaults on the bike path. Those tend to tick up during the summertime.
That's correct.
You have more people on the path, and you have more assailants on the path. So
that's correct.
It should not come as a surprise that we would start to see those trending up in the late spring, early summer.
That's correct. But also, with some of those upticks, you have to develop a pattern, and it's our goal with the police department to prevent that pattern from occurring. Mm-hmm. Because once you have that pattern established, it means it's already gotten a little bit out of control. So the best thing we can do is look at prevention, being out there before the problems start, knowing that in the summer and in the spring with the nice weather, more people are going to be out. We need to look at everything as simplistic as the foliage being cut back to how the lighting is set, if it's sufficient, if there's certain areas that you don't need to have lights changed, lights put in. So things like that really go towards the prevention.
We recently had, I think either last year or the year before, we had closed-circuit TV cameras installed in certain parts of the bike path. Have those been a useful tool for the force when they're trying to track down perpetrators? Or, we have some place strategically across the city. There was a little bit of a controversy about using closed-circuit cameras within Somerville. But I think from what I've seen and talking to some of the members on the force, that it's aided the police department in capturing some of these guys. I mean,
well, there's no doubt that the closed-circuit cameras are a deterrent. If people understand that on the bike path, and it also provides a little bit of a safety valve for people that are walking there, mm-hmm. because no one can really tell whether you're interested in committing a larceny or if you're walking by yourself. Is the camera monitoring what's going on? So it does serve as a deterrent. And I can tell you, again, we talked a little bit about experience overseas and throughout the nation, that most countries really do rely heavily on the closed-circuit televisions. Yep. If you look at the United Kingdom, if you look at some of these other countries, and they don't use it as an invasion of privacy, but they use it as a law enforcement tool, whether it's for traffic control or whether it's for monitoring certain situations. Mm-hmm. So it is a tool that's available. And again, with technology and with the age we're living in, where everything is on a video camera, and if it's not just with the police department, you walk down Broadway, you walk down Somerville Ave, and you might see every third store, every fourth store that has their own cameras that are operating.
Sure.
So,
Yeah,
it's
every single ATM that we go to these days has a closed circuit camera.
if you look at the ATMs, if you look at the convenience stores, if you look at the banks, there's a number of cameras that are out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I kind of found myself on the opposite side of some of my more liberal friends when they were saying it was an invasion of privacy, and I said, no, you can look at the glass half full or half empty. I see it as a very valuable tool for law enforcement to do their job.
It does help.
Yeah. We have another issue that's always been the bane of the mayor's existence, and that is the physical plant of the Somerville Police Department. If you had $50 million, what would you do with it? Would you build yourself a new police station?
Well, I think we have to look at the police station when it was built and what's happened over the last 20 or 30 years, just as far as technology, as far as what we expect of our police station, of our public buildings. And I could tell you that, again, from some of the countries and the areas I've worked, what I would like to see is something more geared towards the community, more of a community room, more of an area where the public can come in, and we talk about transparency, we talk about seeing how the department works, seeing what goes on in the department, but to have these community areas that are set up so that, again, for the community meetings, for hosting the auxiliary police, for certain things that will bring the community into the station.
Right, because the station should not, people shouldn't be afraid of the station.
That's right, and they shouldn't come to the police station only when they have a problem.
Right.
When they've had a vehicle that's been towed or to file a report. And one of the things that I'm getting out with some of the community meetings that I've been involved with since I've taken over is that between our east substation, which will be reopening soon, and our west substation, and also our main station, is that the police department, the police stations are for the public. And people should come in, talk to our officers, talk to our area commanders, and become familiar with what goes on in some of the programs. In fact, some of the things that I'd like to talk about is also maybe this summer with the Civilian Academy and things for the children, maybe a crime scene academy that some other states and other cities have been very, very successful to give a better idea of really what policing is about and what our limitations are.
Yep.
And what I'd like to do when you talk about what I would do at a police station, I would have a center set up where we could bring people in and have a format that would be accessible for the community.
Yep. I will have to say, one of the things that came out of that, before your time, but one of the things that came out of the assessment of the Somerville Police Department and some of the recommendations was the reinstitution and heavy reinstitution of community patrolling. Community officers on the street, walking, visible, or on a bike, very visible to people, not just in the small commercial districts and not just on the major thoroughfares, but actually intense, visibility within the small neighborhoods. And I have to say that's one of the better things that came out of it, because in the neighborhood I live in, we see our community police officer. We know who it is. He introduces himself. And I've seen many of the community police officers across the city. And I think what that does, Chief, is it gives people a sense of security. And it gives them a sense of comfort to know that it's not just when you have to dial 911 that you're going to see a Somerville police officer.
Well, that's our goal. Our goal is to make our police officer accessible to the community. And there probably is no better way than when police officers are out of their cruiser and they're intermingling with the community, with the business community, with community groups, with kids at the playgrounds. But unfortunately, we do also have to talk about some of where we stand as far as with our table of organization. We're at about 82 officers, and that includes officers, patrol officers, that are disabled or on long-term injury and leave. And probably 10, 15 years ago, that number was up around 130 officers. So we're doing more with less. And in a really good situation, if we had those additional officers and additional funding, that would be the goal. Every square would have a community officer walk in the square. They would be specifically looking at parks, community of life issues, just as they did in New York. And it's the community of life issues that really make a big difference where how the community sees their police department. It's dogs that are running off leash in parks. It's the lights that haven't been fixed. It's the windows that are broken, that haven't been repaired. It's the houses that may have been boarded up that, people are living in. So it's things like that by having those offices that we could take out of the cruises and put into the squares and put into the community does make a difference.
Here's a couple of questions for you, Chief, that just really, they're off the wall, so I don't want to put you on the hot seat. One of the things I notice about the crime stats is that one of the largest number of calls that the Somerville police gets is over noise. And mainly that comes through either one or two avenues. Contractors making a whole lot of noise before 7 o'clock when they're not supposed to be on the job, or during the summertime when the windows are open, the boom boxes are going and the cars are flying by. Do you think that we really should be utilizing our law enforcement officers for that, or is there another vehicle that we can use in the city for noise complaints?
Well, we do have officers that are trained. We have the special noise gun registers, and they're trained in how to use it. So there's a citation that could be issued after, a couple of different offenses have been made. The first is a warning. Second one is a smaller fine, and the third is, I think, it's a $100 fine. Whether that could be handed down to the civilian population, it's something to consider. But I really think that the citizens of Somerville have come to rely on the police department as being the one-stop shopping. So that if there's an issue, if there's a complaint, whether it's, again, with dogs that are loose in the park, or noise, or people that are trespassing, the most immediate response, and probably the most effective response that they've seen, is by calling the police and the local officers on the scene handling it. Mm-hmm. So it might be a little bit tough to break away from that trend.
Yeah, it is, and I guess, the reference point there was a time when I was growing up where a police officer was the one that was writing a parking ticket. A police officer was the one that would, come down for a complaint about somebody parked in front of a fire hydrant or something like that. And we moved away from that. There's that interim, kind of parking control officer who now handles a lot of that stuff and takes that, I shouldn't say mundane, but takes that task away from the Somerville police officer. And I guess that's the sense I was asking you. Noise complaints, I understand that they're bothersome. I understand that you need to deal with them delicately because you may not know what type of mind that person is in that's making the noise either. So it's just a question. I'm not proposing it. The mayor's going to kill me, He's going to say, what are you talking about that stuff? Now you're going to get all these people calling me.
Well, and you hit it on the head, though, because when you respond to any type of call, it could be a disturbance, it could be noise, it could be, someone double parked.
Could be domestic abuse, it could be any of those
You don't know
things.
what happens as soon as you open the door when you knock, and you could be encountering something that really an officer who's equipped and trained and has communication and has backup may be the best and most suitable to handle. When you talk about some of the more mundane things as far as, tickets, and our officers are doing that all the time, and, it just took the snowstorms to see, as far as with the tagging and towing, to make sure our streets were clean, that our officers were called in for overtime. And they spent a lot of time away from their families doing that.
Yeah. Well, if I can give you a plug, let me give the plug now, because since I'm already in trouble with the mayor, who is your boss, I'm already in trouble with them for talking about that other stuff. I think when you started talking about the physical plant and kind of your idea of making it more a community center, as well as, your headquarters and the place where the men and women of the force go to work, in my mind, if we can be one of the best communities in terms of development, in terms of social programs, in terms of a lot of the stuff that the mayor is trying to do, but we also cannot neglect the fact that the Somerville Police and the Somerville Fire Department, in my opinion, Joe, deserve a building they can be proud of. So I'll give you that plug.
Thank you.
Anytime I see Joe, I'll tell him the same thing. Priorities. Chief Tom Pasquarello has some priorities within the first year. I'm sure that you and the mayor have talked about it, but what's your top of the mark priority at this point?
Well, it's funny, but the priority is establishing what the priorities are, because the police department, particularly after 9/11, has become a lot of things to a lot of people. And sometimes it's taken away from what the core mission is, and as far as what the main responsibility should be. So within the first month, what I did was I established what the main performance goals will be for the department. And it's been narrowed down to really 5 areas. But within those 5 areas, you have sub-areas that encompass other items. And at command staff meetings, community meetings, even talking with you tonight, There will be the same issues that I'll discuss in these meetings that I will for the next 5 years, because they're things that just don't change. One of the first performance goals is morale, security of my staff, and training. And we talked a little bit about the new police station, but again, things like that will help morale, how we can improve the working conditions, an employee of the month, certain awards that we're looking at. We talked about the shooting of Detective Oliveira, additional training. Our training has been not where it should be, but again, training costs money. It costs overtime.
And it takes time.
And it takes time.
Yeah.
And again, where I mentioned that we're down at almost an all-time low as far as our patrol officers, it's something we have to weave into it and we have to plan into the budget. So that's one of the first priorities. What I'm looking to do, particularly with some of the training and the equipment, is draw off of the federal resources, reciprocal agreements. There's training that's been offered. We've had a couple of training courses where we've been able to send some of our officers to federal training. We have the FBI National Academy. There's a number of programs that are out there. So again, that's one of the priorities. I'm going to online training programs which haven't exist here in the Somerville Police Department, which will allow officers, to take 600-700 courses that are all free, and they could receive a specialization in certain areas. So it's little things like that that we'll start with and work up to a full in-service training. Second area that's a performance goal is community relations. One of the things that I've already done is I moved the community policing officers out of special operations, move them back into doing the same role but in patrol. So what that's done, it's taken them from being a little bit of an island out to the side and putting them into the backbone of the police operations, which is patrol. The sergeant no longer needs to supervise them because they fall within the rank and the hierarchy of the patrol. So that sergeant now is looking at community relations policy and programs. There are so many worthwhile programs in the city, whether it's teen empowerment, whether it's wayside youth. We go on and on and on as far as some of these programs. With this sergeant, now that he doesn't have to supervise those officers, we'll be looking at those programs and those policies and how we can better work together and how we could bring police resources to the community, how the community can be more involved with police operations.
It's going to be about leadership, Chief. I mean, you've assembled. You've come in. There was a great assembly of very well-trained professionals, including your deputy chiefs. There's Upton and Cabral and the rest of them that are down there. People that we've come to know. So I'm going to make a deal with you. We're running out of time, but I'm going to make a deal with you. Come back anytime you want to. Anytime this show is open to you, if you want to talk about what's going on in the Somerville Police Force. I told you 28 minutes were going to go by very, very quickly. But welcome to Somerville.
Thank you.
I know you're no stranger here. Don't be a stranger to Greater Somerville. Come back whenever you want.
Thank you. And if I could just maybe leave it with Deputy Cabral and Deputy Upton, I'm very fortunate to have that executive staff in place. I think for the citizens, for the city of Somerville, between what Deputy Cabral and Deputy Upton bring to the table, as well as with the federal experience that I bring, I think it's probably one of the best situations in all of Massachusetts as far as our combined talents.
I think we're very, very lucky. We're going to sign off tonight. My guest tonight has been Chief of Police Tom Pasquarello. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Well, St. Patrick's Day, before you go slapping down a tenner on your favorite bar, please keep in mind what I said at the forefront of the show, that the folks in Japan are in dire need of food, shelter, and clothing. Anything you can do would be greatly appreciated. Go to redcross.org and follow the instructions there. As always, Somerville, stay safe and stay informed.